Hi, today I'm going to give an introduction to brush calligraphy using a Pentel Touch pen, which is this one here. So, what is the difference between this and this, first of all? So, in my intro to Copperplate, I have been using some pointed metallic flexible nib like this one, or the Hand 101, and this. Differences. So with this one, we have one pen for unlimited amount of colors because I can decide the color of my ink and then keep changing it anytime. Bad things about that is that if you probably don't want to be carrying the ink everywhere, because I once used to carry walnut ink in my backpack all the time, and then one time didn't close it properly and the ink went everywhere, and it was a bit of a drama. So I would say these things you want them to have around your workstation, and you don't want to be traveling with them everywhere all the time if you go to a bar, if you go to a cafe. This one in here obviously is only one color, is red, but this one is a takeaway version. So you can put this anywhere in your bag, in your backpack, in your handbag, in your pocket, and go to a cafe, sit down, grab a notebook, and start just writing some letter forms. I find this tool can be very practical because the way how I use the tool is very, very similar to the way how I write Copperplate calligraphy. And not everyone does it in this way, but I do. And this can be your takeaway version and your quick version for writing letters just on the go. So today I'm going to give an introduction using this tool and the guidelines in here. You can find these guidelines if you go to my Instagram account, follow the link on my bio, and select the option that says Calligraphy Guide Sheets, and you will download a zip folder with a list of guidelines for different styles and a list of resources. Now in here, you see that the guideline is showing like different areas, same as in Copperplate. So we have the X high, and then we have the short and long ascender lines, and we have the short and long descender lines in here. So I'm gonna start writing using the same ratio, and then we are going to change the ratio and see what is the difference between them. So okay, I'm gonna start in here and place a blank paper on top. And for this type of pens, most of the papers are gonna work. So at the moment I'm using a thinner type of paper so that you can see the lines through clearer, but you can totally use regular 100% ATGSM copy paper and it should work just fine. Okay, so I'm gonna attach the pen to the guidelines so nothing is moving. I'm gonna make the camera just a little bit closer and focus, and we are gonna start. Okay, so as a reminder to the intro to lowercase, to the Copperplate lowercase or Copperplate minuscules, I'm gonna move the pen in exactly the same way, keeping the thin and thicks exactly where I did it with the Copperplate nib. So let's start with letter I to give an introduction. So in here, I'm gonna also grab my ballpoint pen. Okay, so this is the area of the X high, and this is where we are gonna start working in here. So now, I'm gonna start with letter I. So with letter I, the entrance starts at the base of the X high and goes all the way up till the top of the X high. So we have a movement that looks more or less like that. Yeah. Then we repeat it again. So we go very, very thin to go up, stop at the top of the X high. Then there is a reference point that it works the same way for Copperplate, which is roughly halfway inside the X high. Now, that's my slant, which I'm using the same slant as Copperplate, 55 degrees if we count it from the horizontal, or 35 degrees if we count that for the vertical. So it depends how we count the slant. And the thick strokes are always going to be following this slant in here. So I'm going to go up thin, and remember that if it helps to make a small mark in the center of the X high to remember this reference point, you can do it at the beginning. So I'm going up, touching the paper really soft, and obtaining a very, very thin hairline mark. And now I'm gonna be applying pressure and going down, following the slant and releasing pressure just before reaching the bottom of the X high, and exit. So this reference point is giving us the place where the thin and thicks meet, or the thin and thicks go away. Now we need the dot of the eye or the tittle at the top. Now let's repeat this movement twice. So we do two eyes next to each other. So we go up thin, top of the X high, and from here we apply pressure and we go down, release pressure before the bottom of the X high and going up again, and then applying pressure and going back down. So repeating twice the shape of my eye, I obtain a letter U. And then we need to check the width. So looking at this, I have the feeling that definitely I could go a little bit narrower. So I'm gonna try to repeat the same movement again, but just go a little bit narrower. So I'm going very, very thin up. And from here, I'm gonna push against the paper thick and release before going around and going again thin and push to go down and exit. The exit of my letter form is going up till again the center of the X high. So it's an elongated exit in here. And the width of this U, I'm happier with the look and feel of this U right now. Now, following the same shapes, we are going to do letter J. So letter J is basically a long I, and we are going to repeat the movement of the I, adding a loop in the descender area. So in here, I'm going up really, really thin. At the top of the X high, I have to apply pressure to go down the stroke. And as I'm reaching the baseline of the long descender line, I'm gonna release pressure, going around and exit. Things to consider in here are, number one, the ratio. So we have 1 unit for the X high, and then we have another one for the short ascenders and another one for the long ascenders. So let's say we have 1 unit for the X high, 1 and 1 for the descenders. So this area is 2 units compared to 1 unit to the X high. Let's press the dot in here. Now, let's go into a new movement. This is called a double turn. So a double turn consists on starting on the base of the X high, and I'm going up really, really thin, going around, applying pressure, following the slant, release pressure, and going around the corner. So that in here we have first turn and second turn. And the shape that we have in here, the shape at the width, should be very similar to what we had in here. So we are adding consistency all the time. Okay? So with this double turn, that's the beginning to build, for example, letter V. And we will do letter V now, and then we will do letter H. So with letter V, we are going to repeat that movement of the double turn. We are going up really thin, going around the corner, applying pressure, going around the corner again. We have a loop, and then exit. And of course, with this loop, we will see later on that we can do a few things. For the moment, I can fill it with ink and go like that. So that is the movement of my letter V. If I repeat this movement again of the double turn, and this time add a loop on the ascender line, so that area, it's my loop on the descenders, and then I'm gonna do the same for the H. So for the H, I'm going to do a new movement called double entrance. So the double entrance consists on, I'm starting to go up, stop, and I repeat the same movement again and keep going up. That's why it's called double entrance, because I go and start the letter form twice. Okay, let's move the paper and repeat it again. So a double entrance movement means that I'm starting on the base of the X high and I'm going up very thin, stop, and I repeat the same movement again. This time much elongated, and I'm reaching the top of the ascender line. So again, in terms of ratios, for this letter form, we have 1 and 2 units for the ascender line and 1 unit for the X high. 1 and 2. And in here, we will do all this movement continuous. I just stopped to show you the ratio, but obviously we will do this movement continuous, and we will do it now again. So starting from the base of the X high up, top of the X high, and then repeat again the entrance, going up, going around, start applying pressure, and down. And from here, I'm going to repeat the double turn. So I'm going up, I'm going down, I'm going out, and finish the letter form. Things to take care of with this letter form. The reference point that I mentioned before in here, it's a point where the thin and thick meets, and we have this negative space in here that has been brought up too high, and so now we have a negative space that is too big. So I'm gonna say no, let's keep the reference point, the mid of the thin and thick stroke, always in the same place, roughly in the center of the X high. So I'm marking now this meeting point, and I will repeat my H again. So the thin stroke, which is the up stroke, goes through the small mark up. I do the double entrance again, going around, down, and from here double turn. Thin, the thin goes away roughly in the center. First turn, release pressure, second turn, and exit. And then now we have the loop in the ascenders. And when we are building an alphabet, when we are designing every letter of the alphabet, we are looking for consistency so that the loop at the top and the loop at the bottom, they all look very similar. If we are lettering a word or a sentence, we are free breaking the rules because we are just taking care of a few letter forms and we want to attract attention. So we want to create an image out of a word or two. But if we are creating the entire alphabet design, we are looking for consistency. So what that thing and that thing is related to each other, and we want it to look similar. Now, what is the next step? The next step is if we change the ratio. So in here we have the relationship is like 2 units for the ascender, 1 unit for the x high, 2 units for the descenders. Now what happens if we change the ratio, and now we are gonna do something like 1 unit for the x high, 1 unit for the ascender, 1 unit for the descenders. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to make the x high double the amount, so 2 units. I'm going to make the ascender line 2 units and the descender line 2 units. So all of the, now every unit is the same size and my letter forms are gonna be a lot bigger. Let's repeat the double entrance and let's repeat the double turn for letter V. So for example, let's go back into letter V. Into this movement, much bigger this time. So starting at the bottom of the X high, going up really thin, going around the corner. Now starting to apply pressure, releasing pressure before turning around the corner, going up, loop for the V, and exit. Now a few things about this. You see how the loop in here of the V is actually not a circle, but it is an elongated shape like that. So it's not a circle, but rather an elongated oval. Number 2, the exit of this V is actually again in the center of the X high. So this elongated movement goes around and exits the V in the center of my X high. And then this is my arm, and I'm opening the arm to hold hands with the next letter form that comes afterwards. What to do with this loop? So you could leave it empty like that and hairline as an stylistic choice. Other option is actually following the ductus that we are constantly doing. That means that when the movement is up stroke is thin, when the movement is down stroke is thick. So this will be actually a thick stroke going down, and that's the loop that it will be related to the movement I'm doing. Option 3 is a very exaggerated loop, and you could also do that, but if you do something like that, that means that we are going to be applying the same style on all the other related letter forms with loops. So that means it's going to relate to the B, it's going to relate to the O, it's going to relate to the C, it's going to relate to W. So we just need to keep in mind that whatever we apply in here, it's going to be applied in the other letter forms because we are designing the alphabet, okay? So I would say this is really heavy at the moment. So I'm gonna go back and do the option 2 that I did. So from the baseline up, around, down, around again, up, push as I'm going down, look for the center of the X high and exit. So I can go with something like that, for example. Now let's do the H with this new ratio and see the difference between one and the other. So in this case, I'm gonna repeat this letter form, but obviously it's gonna look different because now the X high is as big as my ascenders. So let's repeat the double entrance. So I'm starting from the baseline, and remember the meeting point, the reference point, it's half inside the X high. So I'm gonna mark a dot in there so that you have it as a reference in here. So starting from the base, and I'm going up, all the way up. And from here, I repeat this movement again. Around, and applying pressure, and going down, exit. So that this reference point of the thin and thick is in there. Now I repeat the same as I did with the V. So the meeting point is still the same. So half the X high, the thin goes away from the thick. I keep rounding. Now I apply pressure, I release pressure, and I exit. And my exit finishes also halfway inside the X high. So copperplate ratio, classical copperplate ratio, 1-to-1 ratio in here. So that's difference between one and the other. Now for letter N, very much is the same movement that I did in here for the H. I just have a couple of ways to do the N depending if I'm looking for something more classical or something more contemporary. So let's do the first one. So with the first N, and I'm still in this big ratio 1-to-1-to-1. So I'm writing bigger at the moment. I'm gonna start with the brush, and I'm going straight down, and before I finish I go back thin again. So the movement I'm creating in here with this straight N is a flame shape like that. So I start thinner, apply more pressure as I'm going down, and finish thin. From here, same reference point, the center of the X high, the thin and the thick will go away. So you can start the pen in the center, or you can start with the pen at the bottom and then slightly going away. It's also an stylistic decision. I prefer to go from the bottom, I'm going up, in the center of the X high, the thin goes away from the thick, rounding, apply pressure, exit. And my exit again goes up to the middle of the X high. Option 1 for the N. If I use this style of N, I'm gonna be using the same style for letter M. So I place the brush going down, following the slant, and finish. So it finishes thinner at the bottom. The thin goes away from the thick roughly in the center, going down, and thin again, bottom of the M, and again thin, center, the thin goes away, going around, thin again, and exit. So the counter spaces of the M look very similar to the N, because these are cousins or close sisters and brothers, and so everything is related to each other. If we are creating something a little bit more classical looking, we will create the M's and N's, adding an extra arch at the beginning, so that we will have, in this case, we only have 2 arches, but the other option is actually having 3 arches. So let's do the M with 3 arches. Let's move the paper. Okay. So I'll start exactly the same as I did with my letter V. From the baseline, up, thin, rounding at the top, applying pressure to go down, and thin. Reference point, thin goes away, going around, down, thin. And the same again. Third arch, going around, and exit. So in this case in here, I have 1, 2, and 3. And the same will apply for letter N. Obviously, instead of having only one, we will have 2 of them. Alright, so exercises to do with these letter forms would be use the 2 different types of ratios to write a few different words. For example, minimum.